A lot of kids shows' sole purpose is to promote a brand and to sell toys. Think of any Disney movie ever made or how My Little Pony was created by an actual toy company. And there is no better example than Pokemon. Pokemon is a part of a genre I dub the commercialized anime. And on my playground, there were the big three of commercialized anime. And there was a clear winner and loser. While Digimon followed in the footsteps of Pokemon, it failed to reach the height of Pokemon or even Yu-Gi-Oh! So where exactly did Digimon go wrong? Commercialized anime's main goal is to create a whirlwind of interest, where the show gets you into the games and the games make you want to buy the toys. It's basically modern day alchemy, but walking this tightrope is no easy task. And to see why Digimon failed, we're gonna have to look at it from a bird's eye view. So you might be asking yourself, Phil, so what is a Digimon? And a Digimon is simply a digital monster. They're sentient life forms that are made up of data. The Digimon reside in the Digiworld, which exists parallel to Earth and is connected by the telecommunication network. And if you're scratching your head wondering what the hell I'm talking about, then you understand Digimon's first problem. It's too complicated. Let's take a look at Pokemon. It's a world, there's monsters, people use those monsters to fight, easy. Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a world whose Kim Kardashian is a children's card game, great. But Digimon? I shouldn't need to spend 3 hours on the Digimon Wiki to get a vague understanding of the concept. The worlds are merging, each season is a different parallel Digimon world? What? And there's nothing inherently wrong with a complex concept. In fact, strong concepts make for better content. But unfortunately, high art and business rarely go hand in hand. Digimon should be focused on setting up that money printing machine. The less barriers, the better. And while Pokemon has trainers and Yu-Gi-Oh! Has duelists, Digimon has champions. Problem is, there can only be a set number of champions at a time. In Pokemon, any 10-year-old can go off on a cross-country journey to become a Pokemon master, and in Yu-Gi-Oh! You just need to buy some cards and challenge someone to a duel. Because the barrier to becoming either a trainer or a duelist is so low, envisioning yourself in that world is easy. But Digimon and its champions are exclusionary. If you aren't one of those 7 people, you can't be a champion. These brands want to suck audiences into their world. The wizarding world of Harry Potter wants kids picturing themselves under the Sorting Hat. So making it that only special people get to have a Digimon hurts their overall brand. So now that we have a basic understanding of what Digimon are, what about the show? As far as late 90s animes go, Digimon isn't half bad. It has all the classic calling cards of an English dub of that decade, such as bad voice acting and choppy animation.
Digimon fight and Digimon fly, Digimon, Digimon, and
Compared to Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's the best out of the 3. Digimon gave a much more realistic depiction of relationships and their complexities. The conflicts are more personal and dire, making the growth way more meaningful. Plus, the main characters were tasked with saving the entire world. The stakes couldn't be higher. Just compare it with Pokemon, where each episode is a 20-minute cute fest where we learn the same lesson that we learned every other episode after Ash yet again falls for one of Team Rocket's disguises. How many red and blue-haired people do you know? I understand that you're 10 years old, but Jesus Christ, you think you learned after the 12th time. Watching Digimon, you see the relationship between 2 good friends fray at the seam as Bizarro Pinocchio manipulates the world around them, only for the 2 friends to finally overcome the obstacles and send that cursed doll back to hell. By all means, Digimon has all the ingredients to be an amazing kids show, but the anime should act as a 20-minute commercial. Next to Digimon, Pokemon's blatant consumerism becomes obvious, but at least Pokemon knows what it set out to do: brainwash children into buying stuff. Digimon actually wants to tell an engaging story, but that's not what sells. I like to think of Digimon as the Bob's Burgers of commercialized anime. Digimon has heart and soul even if it's not very successful, while Pokemon is Jimmy Pesto who dumbs everything down for a wider appeal. Even though Digimon is the better show, there are things working against it. Because it is a more complex show, jumping into the middle of the series is harder. Just missing 1 or 2 episodes can make the story impossible to follow. In Pokemon, each episode more or less stands on its own. Sure, there is a general arc in Pokemon, but that's not at the forefront of each episode. And while Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a more complex plot like Digimon, each episode pretty much starts or stops with a duel. And even if you don't understand the entire plot of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you can catch a single episode and still get what's going on. And because the story is more complex and the themes more mature, Digimon attracts an older audience. While that does allow Digimon to tell darker stories, that doesn't necessarily help the bottom line. When Pokemon infects a 6-year-old, that's at least 5 years of rabid consumerism. Pokemon games, toys, clothes, whatever. But say Digimon attracts mostly 10 to 12-year-olds? Really? How much longer before those kids grow out of Digimon? By establishing brand loyalty at a young age, a greater emotional attachment is formed. This is how Disney adults are made. But
but Digimon failed to reach that younger demographic because it was too intense and not cute enough. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the games. Pokemon actually first started as a game, and while buggy as hell, the original game had heart. Pokemon was simple enough for a child to make their way through, yet challenging enough that players would be invested without getting frustrated. And with so many variations on how you could play, the replay value became nearly infinite. And by releasing 2 games at once, it became an absolute money-printing machine. But Digimon, on the other hand, started as a short film that became the idea for a brand with the hopes of making $1 billion. And that shows in the games. Digimon games received lackluster reviews, and there was no consistency across the titles. Going from a monster-raising simulator to a dungeon crawler to an action RPG where the Digimon used weapons like swords and guns instead of their own Digimon moves. Because, you know, who likes unique powers? But the consumer never knew what to expect, unlike with Pokemon, where we've known what we've been getting into from day one. Yu-Gi-Oh! Avoids Digimon's pitfall because the main premise of the show centers around a card game. The games easily emulate this, but what is the essence of Digimon and how do you make a game out of it? And it looks like they're finally starting to get it with Digimon Survive that's like a Fire Emblem Tactics RPG. And that's not to say the original games were despicably awful, but they weren't jaw-droppingly good either. Digimon didn't have the raw charm of Pokemon or the familiarity of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games. But perhaps the biggest killer of the Digimon games was the console they were released on. Or should I say, not released on. The first 3 Digimon games were exclusively released on the PlayStation, viewed as the more adult-oriented video game console at the time. Back in the late 90s, more children had access to a Nintendo device opposed to a PlayStation. And if kids aren't playing and falling in love with the games, then it hurts the overall franchise. And finally, one of the biggest staples of the commercialized anime is the card game associated with the brand. And do I really need to go on? Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading cards were all the rage when they were first released, and they have sustained that level of hype 20 years later. With Pokemon, you just had the inexplicable urge to catch them all. And it's so interesting how even when Pokemon were limited to less than 300 unique Pokemon, the creators were able to release so many variations of the same card. And the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show did a great job of advertising the cards. Seriously, Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards always look so kick-ass in the show. But Digimon didn't instill that compulsion to just blindly get all the cards. Digimon in the show act more like characters opposed to actual species. Yes, there are species of Digimon, but I didn't ever really grow an attachment to them the way you love certain Pokemon. Digimon failed in the trading card market for several reasons. From supply chain issues where local game shops couldn't get inventory to sell, to the game being more complicated than Pokemon, mixed with general unenthusiasm by the player base, the Digimon trading cards stopped production in 2002, just 2 years after launching. And without that crucial third pillar, the entire Digimon tower crumbles. And it's not that Digimon was some horrible franchise. It had an amazing anime filled with complex characters overcoming a major obstacle. It's just that Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Knew exactly what they were doing. Luckily, Digimon has a second chance. I'm hopeful that with the release of the new anime, a simplification of the card game, and better games, that our children's children will have the opportunity to buy more useless Japanese crap.